All right, so we're going to make a fall centerpiece today, and I'm gonna take you along for the ride here. So I've chosen this compote bowl, which I think is, they're kind of fun to use because the arrangements can kind of sprawl out of them, and it ends up being a really pretty look. So I have gone ahead and prepared this. If you can see, if you just shoot down on this for me, and there's a like a little cage inside the bowl that we've secured to the bottom, and then I always tape off the top part in a crisscross pattern using a clear floral tape, and it really helps to secure the stems and kind of aids in the design and making it much easier to get your desired effect. So today we're going to use as our main green, I always use lemon leaves. They're my favorite. I think they're very classy and timeless. So I'm going to start by building the base with the greens, which you always want to do. And as we insert them into the vase, you're kind of going to go around the perimeter of the vase, around the edges, and kind of keep the stems pretty long, because your goal is to kind of have the stem reach diagonally all the way across the base of the inside of the vase to the other side, because later when you're adding your flowers, that's going to help secure the flowers even further, because they're kind of going to nest right in the middle of those greens of the stems. So we're just going to go along and build our base of greens. And if you have a Lazy Susan at home, that is certainly a wonderful way to do an arrangement, because it's just so much easier to be able to see all sides and just keep turning it so you never have that one-sided arrangement. And I'm not saying we don't do one-sided arrangements. Sometimes it's absolutely called for. If you're doing a statement piece for example, for an altar, you know, for a wedding ceremony, funeral, that kind of thing, you know, you want that look to be primarily one-sided, and you don't want to waste your blooms on all sides because they won't be seen. So continuing the base, and once we have a good perimeter going, I'm going to just take a few more stems of lemon leaves and keep them pretty long, and just kind of have them come up from the middle, and you'll see later on why I do that and why it's important. And again, like, so the lemon leaves, what I've done is I've stripped the bottom, you know, 2/3 of the leaves, and just kept that top, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 leaves that we're actually going to showcase. And otherwise, you never want to have leaves actually down submerged in the water, because that can cause bacteria and definitely compromises the life of your arrangement. So that's it for the lemon. And now for some added texture, I always like to then go in again with another green. And this is a type of eucalyptus that we're using now. It's called Guinea eucalyptus, and it smells so wonderful, but it just adds like another element of texture to the arrangement. And this will all kind of, you won't really notice the greens when you're looking at the finished product, but it's just one of those things like that they're part of the larger picture. But even though they're not, you know, focused on, they do help to create that overall look that you're trying to achieve, which is a really, you know, three-dimensional, multifaceted, you know, floral piece. All right, so we've added some eucalyptus, and now for the fun part, we're gonna look at our flowers, and that's my dog, Emily. She's showing another dog or something outside, so I apologize. So I am now going to use, this is a particular kind of garden rose. It's called a red heart rose, and the way they open is just incredible. So those are one of my favorites. And so we're going to start to add our blooms, and you always want to add things on the diagonal, never straight up. So you kind of just adding another lemon leaf. Another thing that I try to do is, especially when it's like a special flower or something that's, you know, really a bloom that you want to showcase, I try to frame it like with the greens and kind of make it so it's like enveloped in those greens and it really pops that way. One of my other favorite kind of fillers, if you will, are hydrangeas, because the bloom is nice and big, so it takes up a lot of surface area, and it is not, it doesn't have to be the showpiece of the arrangement. So it's just kind of there as a foundation, but it's just a great bloom to kind of build off of. So that's some bells of Ireland that I think are kind of fun. And whenever I use roses, or, you know, whatever, like the premium flower that you've chosen for your arrangement, there's kind of the law of 3s or 5s, they say. So you want to do groups of 3 or 5, and aesthetically it's just more appealing to the eye. Another thing, I want to get the guard petals off the rose for one, but then not only do you want to do 3s or 5s, but you want to make sure that they're varying length of stems, so they're not all like even. So you see here we've got one long, and then medium, and then shorter. I like to kind of do the shortest one for some reason, like on the inside. I just think it looks more like natural and organic. So I'll do a 3 or 5 on one side of the arrangement, and then follow it up on the opposite side, again, either with another grouping of stems, 3 or 5, or sometimes I'll just do a single, just kind of to tie it in. But in this case, because it is a large arrangement, I'm going to do another grouping here. You know, you don't want it to look too uniform either. You want it to really kind of have an organic, natural look. I mean, that's just my style, but it doesn't have to be yours. And there certainly are some beautiful arrangements that are a little bit more structured, but for this particular one, we're not really going for that style. So just adding a few more greens, and we're really focusing on fall colors here. So I'm also going to add some really fun berries to kind of accentuate the fall theme, if you will. But I've chosen a lot of fall tones in terms of colors. focusing on the deeper, you know, deeper palette, more, you know, reds and oranges and darker greens, just kind of warm and cozy colors. This is one of my favorite blooms to use, and it's actually ginger, but it's a tropical flower, and I always really try to add like one or two kind of extra interesting, more unusual, harder to find blooms in my arrangements. So when you're doing something you want it to be a focal point, it's going to be a little bit taller than the rest of the blooms, and you kind of always want to do at least, you know, if it's something like this and it's kind of a bend, you want to at least do two, so they offset each other, and you want them to be at varying heights, so and not pointing the same direction. So as you'll see here, we got the taller, the shorter, and they're both opposite directions. And then we're gonna fill in a little bit with some yarrow. That's a deeper color that it's not gonna be a focal flower at all. It's just gonna kind of lay there in the background and provide more depth for the arrangement. The key is to just, the more depth you can do, like this, the more interesting the finished product will be and the more unique. These are some beautiful dahlias that are in season now for like another week, that we are lucky enough to get from a local flower farmer in Amesbury, who just focuses on dahlias, and they are gorgeous, and she brings them to us a few times a week, and we're always very excited when we see them because they're amazing. So all these flowers, you know, I shouldn't say all, many flowers have, in terms of what we have available to us as florists, have seasons. And so right now it's dahlia season. You know, we have peonies have a very definite season to them, which is midsummer, you know, like early mid-July. But it's short-lived, unfortunately, because those are one of my favorites. This is wax flower, by the way, a really excellent filler. And there's, you know, lilacs have a definite season. So it's important when you're considering, you know, doing an event, and what your florals are going to be for that event, to consider the time of year and what perhaps might be in season. It's certainly much more economical to choose florals based on, you know, their seasonality, and it makes them more readily available, and of course supply and demand, they're less expensive that way, which is always nice. So if we had a bride, for example, that came to us now and said, you know, I want peonies for my wedding, I don't want anything else but peonies. So, you know, we never say no. It's always doable. However, they have to be sourced, you know, very special order from other parts of the world that, you know, ship them especially for us, and it can get quite expensive. I mean, peonies are expensive to begin with, but they can run upwards, you know, $20 a stem when they're out of season. So always something to consider, and you know, we love it when clients are a little bit more flexible in terms of what their bloom choices are for their event and their florals. We're adding some proteo, which are some also another tropical that have a really cool kind of edgy look to them. Another thing I always take into consideration when doing an arrangement is the textures of the different flowers that I'm using. So we have the soft texture of the roses, which is kind of ruffly and warm and you know, lush and big. And then you always want to kind of offset that with some sharper elements like the branches, like the protea, and you know, have that contrast of the soft and then the more hardened, you know, definite edges. And the more texture, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So we're just kind of going along and filling in where we see fit. And then I always like to have kind of a whimsical touch as well to my arrangements, where there's just one or two flowers that are kind of out there and you know, kind of poke out, if you will, of the arrangement. So they kind of break the mold. And I just love the look of having something a little bit different and keeping it not so uniform. Now we're gonna just continue on with the construction of this, but I'm gonna speed it up for you in a time lapse, and that way you'll get to see the finished product in a lot less time. So now I'm just putting the finishing touches on this arrangement, and I've chosen to add some flowers that I wasn't initially planning on adding. These are called Free Spirit roses, and they are one of my absolute faves. I learned about them actually from a customer who came in and requested them. And once she introduced me to them, I was hooked. So now we carry them all the time, and we have a standing order with the wholesaler that every week we get our shipment of Free Spirits. So the reason why I wasn't originally going to use them in this arrangement, but I decided to add them at the last minute because the berries were, you know, so orange that they just needed another element of, you know, similar color to really kind of pull the whole thing together. So I'm just adding a few of those, but if you'll notice the overall structure of the arrangement, you kind of want it to be a little bit, you know, not so uniform, but in terms of the overall shape, I always try to do like a kind of like a diagonal, you know, upper right, if you will, and then you kind of try to offset that a little bit with a more, you know, it's an angular effect that you're kind of going for. So as I'm saying that to you, I'm realizing that I need a little bit more down here, fullness down here, because we've got that vertical diagonal, and then you kind of want to carry the eye down and have a little bit of something to look at by this way. So just add a little more green, kind of, you can bend it down. A lot of the greens are very malleable and allow for you to kind of flex them a little bit. I am going to perhaps add another ginger that is gonna kind of go right here and be a downward, that diagonal look going here. And this is just such a fun and unique flower to use anyways. One of my other favorite fall types of filler and foliage is this magnolia leaf, because they have the brown underside to them, so it really kind of, the two-tone effect, you know, exudes fall and warmth, and I think it's just really beautiful. So yeah, I think we're just about done here, and I had so much fun doing this for you, and I hope you enjoyed it. And you know, I think as a general rule of thumb, like there are no rules when it comes to floral design, and you know, whatever your particular style is, you know, there are no limits, there are no rules. Do whatever feels most comfortable to you, and every one of your designs should be different. Nothing should be the same, and just go with it and have fun. Thank you.